Well, for the next track, I have a little bonus material to share with everyone. As I'm sure most of you know, in addition to this show, I also co-host another show with Olivia Dabo. And a while back, we had film director Bernard Rose as a guest on that show. And one of the things we spoke about was his connection to this next track in Richard's book. So let's go ahead and give that a listen, and then we'll get Richard's take on it.
So you were working for Jim Henson.
And then after I worked for Jim, I went to film school.
Right.
I went to the National Film and Television School in England, which was the premier film school. And I was a student there. And while I was a student there, just through a whole chance encounter, I ended up making a music video. At the time, music videos weren't a big deal. I mean, people, MTV hadn't really even started in Europe, and nobody really knew what they were or cared about them. And I ended up making a music video for a band. And the first music video I made was a hit. I mean, it was a big hit. It was a worldwide hit.
Boy, was it a hit. Controversial hit.
No. The first one was
Red
Wine for UB40.
Okay.
And so that was shown on TV in the UK, and it was #1. And so suddenly, I was still a student actually at the film school, but suddenly every record company in London was like trying to call me up because I just made this video for Red Wine, and they were like, get that guy, the guy that did Red Wine.
Amazing.
And I was that irritating guy. I was 23 years old,
You were the shit.
And I was the hot young video director. There's a debased form of human being. And I was there, and I was working. I had a production company in London I was working for, and I was there. And it was at a period just after Red Wine when I was being sent every major release by every record company that week. They were throwing them at me. From the Rolling Stones and from this and from that, and I was listening to all this stuff, and I was like a bit of a punk, and I would be like, "Oh man, I don't want them. Oh God, what rubbish!" and throwing them out the window.
I want a reggae version of a Neil Diamond song.
But this was after that.
That's right.
But anyways, I was
kind of being an A&R man in a way as well.
I was like being an A&R man because they were giving me the cassettes of every new release, and I was going, no. So anyway. The doorbell rang one day, and there was this kind of very smart and educated Mancunian guy called Paul Morley was downstairs, and he said, "Can I come up? I've got something to play you." And I went, "What is it?" And he goes, "I'm not going to tell you." I said, "Just leave it in the pile, please," and leave. And he said, "No." He goes, "This is the best record you've ever heard, but I'm not leaving it." And I was like, well, there you go. And that was Relax.
Right.
By Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And he of course, was running a record company with Trevor Horn. He was kind of doing the marketing for him. And this was Trevor's first release they wanted to put out on their new label, ZTT Records. And I'd never heard of this band, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. No one had. They'd never released anything. And Paul put the record on, and I thought, wow, that really is
the best record I've ever heard.
Well, it was just an incredible, revolutionary sound. I mean, now it's like every dance record in the world has copied that in one way or another. But in 1983, that was a very revolutionary record. Doing the Relax video was a lot of fun because I said, well, what do these guys want to do? And he said, they're really out there and they're really crazy and they want to go for it.
Yeah.
So I was very interested to meet Holly Johnson and Paul Rutherford, who were in the band. And I think what was so exciting about them is that they were openly gay and absolutely unafraid of like basically saying, this is our lifestyle, this is what we do, and if you don't like it, we don't care.
Yeah, I mean, and that's rock and roll. I mean, isn't it?
But this is 1983. This was a period when Elton John was married to a woman. So Frankie Goes to Hollywood, they were like, no, we're gay.
Did you have an idea after meeting them straight away or prior to what you were going to do visually and with the concept of the video?
Well, they told me that there was this club that I should go to see what
really went
on. So I went to this club called Heaven in London, and I must say it was a little bit of an eye-opener.
Indeed.
But I did say also, well, this will make one hell of a good video, So basically,
why not?
We got the guys from Heaven, and obviously the whole visual iconography since then has become almost a cliche. The leather, the bondage, all that stuff. Now it's very mainstream.
Yeah.
But in 1983, this was shocking to people, And so we got all these guys, and we got them in, and we did the video. And I delivered it to the band. I'd only ever spoken to Paul Morley and the band. I never spoke to anyone else from the record company. I didn't even really meet Trevor Horn till after that. And I certainly didn't meet anyone from Island Records who were distributing it. But the first thing I knew that there was a problem was the guy from Island Records called me up and he asked me to come into his office. And he sat me down and he put the video on. He'd obviously seen it. And I sat there looking at it like, yeah, it's great, isn't it? And he went, you expect me to pay for that? They were horrified by it. They were like, this is useless. We can't show it on television. No one is going to play it. At the time, most videos in the UK had to conform to children's TV standards.
Yeah, it's interesting how once it gets out there and teenagers start to sort of buy the T-shirts saying relax and...
Well, that didn't happen. Well, I'll tell you what happened.
Didn't happen right away.
This is a great story. This is absolutely what happened. So they released the record, right? They refused to pay me the second payment on the video, right? They released the record just before Christmas. Not really a good idea. It's the most crowded time of the year. The record goes in at number 79, right? And a week later, it's like 83. So it's dead. So anyway, there was this guy who took over from Island Records from the person who was originally there. He loved the record, and he thought, I have to do something about this. And he figured out that was the lowest volume sales period for records, was the week between Christmas and New Year. And they all knew what the chart shops, in those days there were certain record shops that would report back to the chart, and they would, give the record its chart position, but the record companies knew which ones they were. So he sent guys out with vans to go to all the chart shops and buy all the records back. In the old days, that was called chart hyping, and it was common practice. And so he bought the whole stock of Relax back. So in the first week of January, the record was number 9. Yeah. It went from like 89 to 9.
Amazing.
Because it was a low volume sales week, and he just bought them all back. So the record was now number 9, and there was this DJ on the BBC One called Mike Reed, who they knew was really, really conservative and really kind of easily shocked and a homophobe. So what he did is he sent him my video, the video that he said that they couldn't use.
Right. That he wouldn't pay for?
He sent it to Mike Reed with a note saying, do you realize what this filthy song is about?
Yeah.
And Mike Reed saw the video, was completely shocked, and then had to go on air to do a chart rundown show. No. So he's on air, right? He's completely riled up, and he goes, and number 9 is Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. He goes, but I'm not going to play it because I've seen the video, I know what those lyrics say, and I think it's disgusting.
Number 1.
Right. Yeah, the best PR you can get.
And he didn't play it, right? And that was it. And the BBC then officially banned it.
Talk about strategy.
Because they had to, because now they had to. No, it was sent up to the very highest Mandarin at the BBC, and they watched it and they're like, oh dear, that looks like our club on a Thursday, Johnny, doesn't it? It does a little. Well, we better not have that on the air. The Daily Mail will be right down our throats. So they banned the record, and of course it was number 1 for I think 8 weeks.
Incredible.
9 weeks. I sold 3 million copies in the UK alone. I mean, it became. As you say, Catherine Hammett made that T-shirt, Frankie Says Relax.
Yeah.
Every single girl in London in 1984, that summer, had that T-shirt. Every single one.
Yeah, and then quite notably, a lot of boys started wearing them too, and feeling quite, which is great, and feeling comfortable about expressing themselves in that regard.
They didn't play my video on the kids' shows, but they played it on the news all the time. And here's the video from the banned record, and up it came. They wouldn't, it's always the way, isn't it?
The forbidden fruit. That's what everybody wants.
Everybody wanted it, and then suddenly it became a kind of cultural moment. I think it was actually very healthy and very liberating, because I think it really was the first time an artist that was openly gay had said, I'm not only not going to hide it, I'm going to shout about it and celebrate it. And it was a huge hit. And I think it was like a cultural moment, really. So, yeah, I was very proud of what happened with all that.
Pretty great, huh?
Yeah, it's really, he does sort of hype things himself a bit because, it's not the first time an artist in the UK was like openly gay. Right. Tom Robinson, Sing If You're Glad to Be Gay, which became something of an anthem in the 70s. So 1983, he's talking like it's the Dark Ages. Really, the only thing that was outstep in 1983 was this kind of outrage, which was really driven by the media, by the press, you know. And then, yeah, BBC banned it. That was always a guarantee of, you know, sales when they did that. But for me, you know, really what's stunning about that record is the production. Yeah. You know, Trevor Horn, who I interviewed, and his engineer, Steve Lipson, interviewed him too. You know, they basically contrived to create a very unique sound at that time. It's, you know, it's not a Spectre sound, but it's a really busy sound. There's a lot going on in there. Yeah. And I thought that, you know, he actually did strike out on his own. You do get people who do something different. But I thought Trevor Horn of that time, it was really pretty groundbreaking.
You know, as we mentioned last time, Donna Summer's "Love to Love You, Baby." You know, if you want to have a big hit, get somebody to ban it. Yeah, I do feel like compelled to mention that between that clip and yourself, that makes 3 English accents on the show versus my lone American accent. So that's got to be some kind of record for the show.
You got a British invasion going on.
Also, yeah, in further support of your point, Boy George came out in 1982.
Yeah, you know, and there, I don't remember, there was the artist Marilyn, and I mean, it was a lot. So I mean, the 70s broke a lot of barriers, and so as I said, I think he's kind of hyping it. But yeah, you know, some people were kind of outraged. Most people weren't.
You know, as Bernard said, that went to #1 in the UK. It was number 10 in the US, and that's definitely a recording and a video that made it under my radar. You know, everybody was talking about that.
Yeah.
And maybe another new genre, you know, homoerotic dance music. I don't know. You know, part of being a Seminal recording is like sort of being something people haven't heard.
Right. You know, it was like basically the Village People on steroids when it came to the video.
Yeah, and the Village People way preceded it. So
yeah, 78.
Right. But it's just fun to hear from somebody, you know, because he had done Red Red Wine for UB40. And we spoke about that in that episode too. Those guys were, he said everybody in that video was just, well, you're using your English word, pissed. Everybody was just drunk off their ass. I mean, from everybody in the crew to the extras to the band. And
well, that's the culture.
It gave it sort of a little sheen. But well, next another openly gay band, Depeche Mode. People Are People from 1984. Number 4 in the UK, number 13 in the US. More of that 80s style singing. They were more political than Frankie. It was a song about intolerance.
Yeah.
You know, in Gareth Jones is who you spoke with?
Yes, it is. And, you know, he was the engineer and also a co-producer. And they worked at Hansa Ton Studio in Berlin, which is where Bowie also recorded.
Nice.
And, you know, it was a kind of a good setting for that kind of music at that time. It was never a favorite of mine, I have to say. No. You know, to see it on BBC's Top of the Pops, saw them performing and stuff. I never really was that convinced. They were very serious about what they were doing, but I didn't really buy into it.
And of course, we're getting deep into the video era. I'd said earlier, there comes a point where things precede you, like Elvis preceded me, you know. And then there comes a time when you go, oh yeah, Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. I bought that when it first came out. Then there comes a time where you go, yeah, I stopped following me. I don't know who and part of it is age and everything. And so, you know, sometimes I also, for me, I started playing professionally in the late 70s, and during the 80s, I was actually playing in clubs, and I, you know, very often between sets, they would just play a bunch of videos. Could be Van Halen, Hot for Teacher, could be, you know, any of the ones you associate with that time, including our next 1984, Tina Turner, What's Love Got to Do With It? US #1, UK #3. It was considered a comeback record for her. She was 45 years old. At the time, fake harmonica solo, courtesy of the Yamaha DX7 synthesizer, which was considered cutting edge at the time, but whose reputation has suffered through the years, possibly unfairly. You know, there again, not a song I would go buy or anything, but I was happy for her.
Yeah, songwriter, producer Terry Britton, I interviewed him along with the engineer John Hudson, who owned the studio where this was recorded, Mayfair Studios in northwest London, which was kind of around the corner from where I used to live, and did a remarkable thing. I mean, that was one of the great career comebacks, okay? It's not like she'd gone into the gutter or anything, but her time had certainly gone, it seemed. She was a star of yesteryear, and a star as part of, you know, a double act as such, even though she was clearly the front person in that. But here, you know, they see the talent, you know, they can hear the talent. that incredible voice.
Yeah.
And I just remember them telling me about how at first they were having to kind of teach her a bit of nuance with this song. You know, it's like you just don't want to be belting everything from, you know, the get-go all the way through. Yeah. And because that was her instinct.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, Tina, hold it back, hold it back, hold it back.
Yeah.
And she had to trust them in that. And she did ultimately. And the results speak for themselves. You know, it kind of helped coin the phrase blue-eyed soul. A remarkable record, really. Yeah, one of the great songs of 84. And as you can see in this book, we've got quite a few of them, haven't we from 84?
Yeah, I definitely noticed that. And she had a pretty good run after that. I mean, she was doing the Mad Max stuff, but she had more hits.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, early in her career, she certainly was known for her energy level. I mean, she and her background dancers, they were just like a bundle of energy when they came out. So you could see how somebody would say to maybe be more restrained. Well, as you said, 1984 was a pretty, lucrative isn't the right word, but prolific year. Next, we got Bryan Adams' Run to You. I would say that recording sounds less quote-unquote 80s than a lot of the other releases of the time. I think it holds up a little better today in terms of the production. I don't think it used as many gimmicky sort of 80s sounds.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's interesting because the producer of this, who I interviewed, was Bob Clearmountain, also recorded it. And Clearmountain would go on to become known less in that era as a producer specifically than a remixer. Yeah. He became the guy for remixes, a Bob Clearmountain remix, you know. Yeah. And a lot of people, you know, even in the industry, just really respected him, his abilities in that regard. But here, yeah, he's behind the board as the producer as well. And they recorded, I think it was in Vancouver. And a huge hit. I mean, Bryan Adams at that time was red hot, and he would continue to be for quite a few years.
Mm-hmm. Well, he has a great singing voice, no doubt about that. And another sort of like, you know, T-shirt and jeans kind of image. He wasn't trying to be George Michael or anything with a flashy appearance. For me, Run to You, I mean, it has an ambiance. What you're always looking for in a production is an ambiance above just the basic song, and that definitely has one, you know, setting a mood. Certain bands were really good at that. Led Zeppelin's a good example. Down by the Seaside, Battle of Evermore. In addition to just the music, there's a sort of vibe and ambiance. But for me, Run to You sort of redeemed Bryan Adams for me somewhat, because he had done this song, Somebody, and it went, I need somebody like you. I want somebody like you. I got, how much more basic can a song be? I mean, that even makes, you know, Every Breath You Take look like poetry. And I was like going, come on, man, that's way too basic. I saw his video. I need somebody like you. I want somebody like... Kindergartner could have wrote that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there again, it was a hit. So who am I to say? But Run to You, number 6 US, number 11 UK. And
and Bob Clearmountain was involved in the remix of the next song in the book, Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen.
The Boss, still in 1984. Another misunderstood song.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's played as an anthem always, isn't it? I mean, I've been to July the 4th fireworks, you know, displays, and that's the big anthem as the rockets are exploding across the sky. And it is not really a very patriotic song.
No, what it's about is being screwed over by your country. Is the exact opposite.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think Reagan picked up on that too, because and it does work in an anthemic sense. What actually gets my attention about this recording, I don't know if there's anything else like this. You know, when you hear that da 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 da, that is literally the whole song. There's no bridge. There's no solo section. The melody in the verses and the choruses, you know, is literally, I think, really close to the same. You know, it's like born down in a dead man's town, born in the USA. I mean, to me, it's the epitome of a lyrically driven song. It's all about the lyrics. It has the big sound, but apart from the bass note alternating back and forth, it's just one chord. So
right,
it's pretty, you know, and you don't get bored of it. Like, okay, change to a different part. It's like you don't really notice it. And when I saw this in the book, I went, well, let me go listen to that. Is there any other part? All I remember is the da 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 da. And it's literally all it is. But you know, like Bob Dylan, to me, Bruce Springsteen has always really been more about his lyrics than his music, or you know, in his chord changes, or even his vocal competency. Frankly, you know, the appeal for Bruce has always been, you know, what he's saying.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's I always heard about Bruce back then, about him giving incredible live performances.
Right.
These sort of 4-hour shows. So his reputation preceded him for me in the UK. I heard about him more than I was hearing him initially. This is like, I'd say most likely late 70s, early 80s. Right. But then, it just began to grow. Those live performances really kind of established him over there. And he backed it up with the music, without a doubt. And Born in the USA, a song of its time, but it's really stood the test of time.
And of course, he's written many songs before and after. He wasn't a quote-unquote one-hit wonder. Another thing that's very surprising is that song charted higher in the UK than it did in the USA. And went to number 9 US, number 5 UK. That's
there you go.
Now, a little bit of information. That title was not even Bruce's title. It was the working title of a movie, and he was asked to write a title track for it. So he declined to play the lead role in the movie, and then the movie title was changed to Light of Day, but he just kept Born in the USA for himself. Now, the person who ended up playing the role that he turned down was Michael J. Fox. It's hard to imagine Bruce Springsteen, being up for the role of Marty McFly. So. You don't really associate those two. So
a very laid back Marty, yeah.
Well, finishing up with 1984, number 1 US, number 3 UK, Madonna's "Like a Virgin." I definitely remember the video for that and the the impact she had. I mean, I spoke about the PMRC, the Parent Music Resource Center. Apparently, that whole movement was started because one of these senators' wives' daughter came and asked her, "Mommy, what's a virgin?" And it was because of this song.
Yeah, I mean, at the time it was edgy, back in 84 to have a song actually called Like a Virgin. That is something that times have certainly moved on from that. Yeah. And I just remember seeing the soft focus video on Top of the Pops. I think she's in Venice. I was also familiar with her, doing Holiday. And it was kind of around that era. I think I saw her in Desperately Seeking Susan.
Yeah.
She was the hot new thing, and it was a catchy song without a doubt. When you read the story about her, it becomes clear that she really knew how to work the industry, and basically how to get in there. If it's okay, I could read from a part of the book.
Oh, please do.
Because the book, it's broken down each chapter into the sort of anecdotal stuff, the backstory to the song, to the recording, the composition, everything. Then you have separate from that, the technical details, the equipment they used, how they used it. And then there are sidebars. And one of them is called Like a Publicity Whore. It's the Like a Virgin music video, directed by Mary Lambert and shot in Venice, Italy, as well as New York City in July 84, alternately portrayed Madonna as an innocent bride and horny slut, adorned in jewelry with Christian symbols. This was more than enough to ruffle conservative feathers. Still, even more controversial was her performance of the song at the first MTV Video Music Awards that same year. Attired in a wedding dress, veil, and boy toy belt buckle, Madonna appeared atop a giant wedding cake before humping and writhing on the stage. Critics who had already been complaining that the song and video promoted sex outside wedlock while mocking religion and moral virtue were outraged, branding the singer a whore and calling for her records to be banned. Not that the rhetoric harmed Madonna's career. On the contrary, the criticism simply resulted in increased record sales and confirmed to the singer, if she didn't already know it, that controversy would be a key ingredient in her recipe for success.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Made the critics hate her more and made her fans like her more.
Yeah.
She really, and I actually, it's the writhing around on the stage in the wedding dress is what I remember.
It would be, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, with that song, I don't really remember the official video for it as much. But Bruce Geitch has been on the show, and he worked in the studio with her, and he said she was a hard worker, and her thing was, time is money, and it's my money, so let's get in and focus, and he appreciated her work ethic. But as you say, half of it was the music, and half of it was manipulating the media, so-called, and she's another person who benefited from the music video era, and she liked to make the videos that people were going to be talking about. So
yeah. And it was an era when she could still outrage people, at least outrage the media. Let's put it that way. And then they can tell people that they're outraged.
Exactly. Well, we can finally leave 1984, and we're also actually going to transition away from the vinyl era and start to creep our way into the era of the compact disc. 1985, Dire Straits, Money for Nothing. U.S. #1, UK #4. This always struck me as sort of blatant pandering to MTV. It literally goes, "I want my MTV." I mean,
absolutely, right?
I think that was their current slogan. We mentioned earlier about Montserrat and the Police recording there, and this album was also recorded there, which sort of explains why Sting was around, to sing on the track. But what I learned from your book was that Omar Hakim played drums on the Dire Straits album. Another Sting tie-in, because on early in solo career of Sting, Omar was his drummer. But I was a little unclear on one thing that your book straightened out. Mark Knopfler was in an appliance store, and he's watching MTV, and a delivery guy starts to comment about the musicians in the videos. He says they're little faggots, they get money for nothing, because to him, playing music isn't a real job like what he does. They get their chicks for free, which either means he pays for hookers or he spends money whining and dining women. But rock stars, have girls throwing themselves at him. So I was never I didn't realize it was one guy. I thought he had overheard a conversation, but this guy was talking directly to Mark. And I wonder if the delivery guy ever realized that he was the inspiration for that song.
He must have done at some point. So, that must have got figured out, I'm sure. I'm sure. Most likely he's written his book and made a film.
That's it. But yeah, there again, I appreciate Mark Knopfler's talent, and I appreciate, the sort of hitability of that song, but he's one of those guys who looks bored when he performs. Like he's sort of stoic face, and he almost sings. Because, of course, the first thing...
but he was more about the music, to be fair.
True.
It wasn't so much about the image. He really, is a serious musician.
Right.
He was more about music. I remember the first time I think I saw Dire Straits on TV was before this, and it was Sultans of Swing. And a friend I was watching the TV with, he was a big Bob Dylan fan. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I like this band." I was, "Yeah, who's this?" "Called Dire Straits." "Why?" He said, "Just watch." And as soon as I heard Knopfler's vocal... that sort of Dylan-esque feel to it, I went, all right, okay, I know why you like them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is my first exposure was also Sultans of Swing. Although I didn't see it, I just heard it. I heard the really sort of clean guitar tone, and even Steely Dan liked his guitar playing enough to have him play on Gaucho. But yeah, very Dylan-esque in terms of, very sort of minimal effort on the vocals as a technique. Not a Tina Turner kind of problem. You're never going to have to tell him, tone it down, Bob Dylan, tone it down, Mark Knopfler, So, yeah, I mean, I respect the guy's talent and everything. I'm saying I wasn't really buying Dire Straits records where I might have bought Synchronicity by the Police. But I certainly, could recognize that I like the rhythm guitar tone a lot, and I could certainly recognize that, it was a hit song.
The other thing is, you touched on that Sting is on the record, and this is the era. It was actually a terrific era when there was a lot of collaborating going on. That hadn't been the case as much before. Right. You would have never had Live Aid, unfortunately, in the 60s or something, and have Elvis on the same bill as the Beatles and the Stones. There's only so much room for all those egos. Mm-hmm. But in this era, and this is the era, this is right, when we do have Band Aid and Live Aid and We Are the World and all that stuff, a lot more collaborating between major artists, and that made for some exciting stuff.
Oh, definitely. Easy Lover, Phil Collins and Philip Bailey from Earth, Wind and Fire. I mean, that kind of came out of left field. It was a cool song, and they were cool together. And that's a great point, too. Continuing in 1985, another big band of the late 70s and, of course, the 80s, Talking Heads. Road to Nowhere. This is probably another situation where the person you interviewed said, well, instead of talking about the obvious hits everybody thinks about, let's talk about this one. I mentioned that because it was a number 6 in the UK and it didn't even chart in the US.
Yeah, which I'm actually surprised. I didn't realize that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they're sort of groundbreaking in their own way, okay? And very inventive videos, of course. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because with like David Byrne as the front man, somehow in my head it kind of connects with the next song in the book, you know, the Smiths, The Queen is Dead, right, with Morrissey as the front man. I'm not saying they're the same, but somehow, you know, I see them kind of, you know, I kind of put them together in a way because they were different kind of frontmen, okay? They weren't the standard guy there, you know, front center stage. They very much projected their own personality, or at least the personality that they'd contrived for public consumption.
I would actually sort of tie Talking Heads back to where we started with Devo, in which if you see something that Devo does or that Talking Heads does, it reads as an art project to me. You know, yeah. It reads as these guys are concerned about the art. And interestingly, in the video for Road to Nowhere, David Byrne used the techniques that Peter Gabriel took to sort of a different level, used to a far greater extent in his video for Sledgehammer, which possibly overshadowed the David Byrne's idea. But yeah, Talking Heads, definitely another one that had a lot of cool songs and a lot of cool things happening. You know, a female bass player, which was a little bit unusual. And, you know, a song about, you know, consumerism being a road to nowhere. So, you know, they were a little more elevated than I Want Somebody Like You. You know,
yes.
You know, various shortcomings of modern society are sort of a common topic for certain bands. You know, I never really know how effective that really is, you know, because, you know, world leader, I can't imagine one of them saying, call off the war. I just heard this song. It tells me it's wrong for me to do this. You know, it's like, so it really amounts to commiseration, I think. You know, I think of Give Peace a Chance, John Lennon, that chorus sort of does give a sort of feeling of uniting people, but then the verses are so like, I mean, even he needed cue cards to remember the verses. So what I'm saying is, if you're going to write a song calling you know, the economy a road to nowhere and stuff, you're going to end up just people going, yeah, I agree with that, but it isn't really going to change anything. So it makes me wonder if, you know, entertaining people might be a better approach than educating people. But I mean,
well, that's been an increasing trend really since the late 60s, hasn't it? You know, I mean, what was once just fun and liberating in terms of rock and roll turned into a whole other thing with the singer-songwriters conveying personal messages.
Right. And to me, it's all good. I only care how effective something is. Like, you know, Give Peace a Chance stands out as a chorus that people are going to be... You can always imagine a big crowd of people anywhere in the world singing that chorus, even if they don't speak English. It's sort of like a We Shall Overcome of its time. But
right.
You know,
I mean, you know, you're sort of talking about this stuff, you know, in terms of the theme, and like, you know, with the Smiths, as I said, which is the next track, which is from '86, The Queen is Dead.
Yeah.
You know, here you've got the Merchant of Misery, haven't you, Morrissey? You know, I mean, it's just, I mean, I love some of his stuff, but man, it's like, you don't want to listen to that if you're depressed.
No, and we did an episode about life-changing songs where I had the listeners send in a song that one particular song changed their life in some way, and Peter Zakos sent in Shoplifters of the World Unite. And not because he wanted to shoplift, but because he was in college and the tune was coming out of somebody's room, and he'd never heard that sound before, and he was really drawn to the sound, and it sort of changed his taste in music. So, absolutely.